This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Last week, images of a crazy, futuristic, DeLorean-esque concept car hit the internet and made quite an impression. Universally loved, it seemed. This thing is absolute fire. Retro but modern, boxy but sleek. And there's something about them LED headlights that's just wonderful. So who's responsible for this? Maybe it's a brand new EV startup. Maybe it's from the land of the rising sun, Toyota, Nissan, Honda. American, European maybe? No to all. This is in fact from Korean automotive powerhouse, Hyundai. The Hyundai Envision 74 concept. Now look, I think it's fair to say Hyundai hasn't always had the greatest reputation, right? The Accent, the Sonata, the Elantra. Look, I've always loved cars growing up. I've always been car spotting since I was a kid. But through the 2000s, rarely did I look at one and think, ooh, I like that. Sure, the second generation coupe looked pretty good, all right? That was quite nice. But the first generation looked like a fish trapped in a lift door, mate. What were they thinking? So when the subject of who would you like to see join F1 comes up, right, I think there's two ways of looking at it. There's kind of like the dream team that wouldn't necessarily make sense, but you would love to see in the sport. And then there's the more realistic option, a brand that you think you can make a compelling argument to why F1 would make a lot of sense for them to jump into. Because ultimately, it's a marketing exercise first and foremost. And the brand, more than any other, for a long time now that I've been saying makes sense to be in Formula One is Hyundai. Seeing this insane concept drop gave me the nudge to make this video that's been in the back of my head for a while now, right? So here we are. This is what I think the Hyundai Formula One team would look like. We're talking drivers, we're talking team principal, engine supplier, headquarters, overall suit design and livery. Hyundai is a company that clearly recognises the benefits of being involved in motorsport, right? So they've got a lot of presence in rally, WRC, they've got plenty of presence in touring cars as well. They recognise the brand perception help, they also recognise the R&D help by running these parts into the ground that can potentially find their way onto their road cars. They've got their N performance line, which is kind of like the M series for BMW, right? And that's fairly new, yet they've used rally and touring cars to legitimise it, I think, in the mind of consumers. Yet in the minds of many, as far as I'm concerned, they are still struggling to overhaul the poor brand reputation that they've had from the past. Like take the new i10, right? Their little compact car. For me, honestly, hand on heart, I think that's one of the best looking kind of small compact cars on the market right now. But honestly, would I like it even more if it had a Toyota, an Audi, even like a Ford badge? Brands that I historically have more of a positive view towards. I probably would. Peugeots are for people who sit 2 inches from the windscreen. Cadillacs are stupid, bloated, unnecessary. And Fiat's always break down. Look, these are brand perceptions that we have. There's a reason the Top Gear Peugeot episode exists, right? That's where Formula One comes in. I think it's done wonders with Mercedes. I've mentioned this not that long ago. The perception was the Mercedes were just for old, rich, retired people. Now you've got every flash twat in London with an AMG sticker on the back of their car, even if it's not really an AMG. Concepts like the Vision 74 do a great job of showcasing what Hyundai want to be, right? And that car will probably never make production, which is a shame. But if they're prepared to do that, then why not jump into Formula One, the biggest stage, motorsport stage anyway, on Earth? Viewing figures are flying through the ceiling, plenty of case studies on, again, brands being able to change their perception by being in the sport. Use F1 to make Hyundai cool. Now Hyundai Motorsport actually have a banging little website. You can learn all about N, which wasn't like Engine, Embryo. They were like the bad guys in Crash Bandicoot, weren't they? And all their success in WRC. They have a lovely little website. And you know what? With today's video sponsor, Squarespace, so can you. It's never been easier to build your little online home, whether you've got an e-commerce business, whether you just want a blog or a portfolio. Squarespace makes it so easy with thousands of drag and drop templates to choose from. Beautiful. I know if I was to ever be hiring for a graphic designer, video editor, if they had their very own website to showcase their work, I'd be more impressed than someone who didn't. And best thing of all, like any product or service that is genuine and transparent, you can try it free of charge. You don't have to give them any money until you want to take that website that you've created and you're happy with and put it to the rest of the world. And when that time inevitably comes around, you can head to squarespace.com/TommoF1 and save 10% off your first website or domain. I mean, it's just a logical thing to do, right? I mean, if a multi-million-pound automotive manufacturer like Hyundai can have their own website, then why can't you, Steve, Gary, Tracy? Hyundai Formula One team, let's make it happen. Starting with the power plant, what engine is going into this car. Now, they are a manufacturer, so there's definitely an argument that they could potentially produce their own engine, but I think there is a compelling argument for a customer relationship. So like I mentioned earlier, WRC, rally is an area where Hyundai have put a lot of effort and a lot of work into over recent years. They returned to the sport in 2014 after a 10-year hiatus with Ott Tanak, Thierry Neuville, Danny Sordil and Oliver Solberg all at the wheel of their i20 coupe. They won the Manufacturers' Championship in 2019 and 20, narrowly beating out Toyota in both years. I think the powerhouse that Toyota is, that's a huge dub. But why am I talking about their rally endeavours? Well, look at the team name. It's the Hyundai Shell Mobis World Rally Team. Shell have been partners with Hyundai Motorsport since 2005, and that relationship has only developed over time. They obviously supply all their lubricants and they're more of a technical partner now than when they started. So with such a well-cultivated relationship in place, it would make sense for Hyundai to retain that relationship if they were to join Formula One. And who does Shell supply? That's right, Ferrari. So it might seem like a bit of a weird coming together of Korean and Italian, but for me, the engine supply for the Hyundai Formula One team is going to be Ferrari. Now for team principal, who are we entrusting in taking this brand spanking new team from nothing to something? Because I think particularly from a team that's starting from scratch, having a TP with experience in the sport is extra important. So there's going to be a lot of nuances associated with running a Formula One team that wouldn't necessarily be obvious to someone who hasn't managed an F1 before. On top of that, with a Ferrari power unit, it would make sense to maybe bring in someone who's got some kind of relationship to Ferrari. Well, my candidate is the ever charismatic Silver Fox that is Maurizio Arrivabene. Ferrari team principal from the end of 2014 to the end of 2018, now Chief Executive Officer at Juventus Football Club. This man was exposed to F1 right at the sharp end, so led Ferrari to 2 championship title challenges for sure in 2017 and 18. And perhaps he never reached the expectations that arguably he should have at Ferrari, but look, at the end of the day, that is the most high pressure team principal job in F1. Period. He knows how to conduct himself in the paddock, and I think he would be welcomed back with open arms, and a team like Hyundai would get a lot of value from his experience. Would he come back? Look, he's ticked the football box now. He's had his fun in Turin. Maurizio, come on, mate. Come back. Well, you haven't got a choice, actually, to be honest, mate, because I've picked you as my Hyundai Formula One team principal. Now for the headquarters, the base of operations. Look, first thing you'd be like, okay, Korean car maker, let's set up a base in Seoul. Would that be nice? Yes. Would that be a realistic? Unfortunately, no. Look, the vast majority of the calendar is in Europe or in the Americas, right? Yes, sure, they'd benefit at, Japan, China, Singapore would be relatively close compared to the other teams, but for the majority of the season, they'd be absolutely miles away. So I think a home in Seoul, unfortunately, wouldn't make too much sense. And another reason why I think Hyundai makes so much sense is they already have a huge motorsport facility in Europe. Hyundai Motorsport GmbH already exists, established in 2012. Hyundai's global motorsport activities are all operated from Alsenau in Germany, just outside of Frankfurt. It's a massive facility with up to 18,000 square meters of potential capacity, with the vast majority of infrastructure required to run a Formula One team already in place. I don't think they've got a wind tunnel, but at the end of the day, they're not actually that far from Himmel, which is where Alfa Romeo Sauber are, so that maybe they could just use theirs. If you ask me, building up the infrastructure is a big reason why we don't see more teams jumping at the prospect of getting into Formula One, and why all this talk around Porsche and Audi is mainly around them taking over other teams, be that Red Bull, McLaren, Sauber, rather than building their own from scratch, because it's so much more appealing to just buy up a team that already exists. All the infrastructure, all of the facilities are in place. It's almost like push to start, go, rather than building up from scratch. But the good thing for Hyundai is they've already got a big fat off facility that's employing plenty of motorsport people that they can just add Formula One to alongside the rally and touring car divisions. So my Hyundai Formula One team headquarters will be based in Alsenau in Germany. Okay, time for drivers. Who's going to be piloting this car. So first pick for me, I've gone with Jack Aitken. Jack's currently racing in European Le Mans, is also still doing his reserve driver role at Williams. That's the role that saw him get his run out in 2020 at the Sakir Grand Prix when Lewis got COVID, so George replaced Lewis and then Jack replaced George. I think Jack did a pretty good job, all things considered. Obviously, apart from the shunt that took him out the race and also destroyed George's chance of winning the race, which, you know, it's a bit awkward. Look, there's two main reasons I've gone with Jack. So he does have F1 experience. Again, he's been working with Williams for years now. He did get that run out. He's done a lot of sim work for them. He used to be part of the Renault Academy as well. So he's had run outs in the Renault F1 car. He's come into the table with some experience, not a huge amount of experience, but some. Did he light up Formula 2 like other race drivers have done who are younger than him? No, but I think Jack's experience also in GTs and prototypes is only going to help him jump into this new style of F1 car and be quick. Now, I just see Jack as a safe pair of hands at a bare minimum. He's still only 26, and I actually think maybe he would surprise a few people. Because on top of that, and reason number two why I think Jack makes sense, is that he's half Korean, and to have the first ever Korean Formula 1 team employ a Korean driver, and a pretty competent one at that, makes a lot of sense once again. Jack seems very proud of his Korean heritage, and I'm sure he leveraged that to an extent to get Korean airline sponsorship on his Lamborghini that he races in ADAC GT Masters. I've seen on Instagram Jack's been doing bits with Genesis, which is like Hyundai's premium brand, kind of what Lexus is to Toyota or Infiniti is to Nissan. There's already a degree of a relationship there, so let's consummate it with an F1 seat. Alongside Jack, I think this driver was a pretty easy pick because he's lighting Formula 2 up this year and he's got no affiliation with any kind of customer team, any F1 team as of yet anyway. So it would make a lot of sense for Hyundai to slip in and snap him up, you know what I mean? Because I think Felipe Drogovic is double decent. The 22-year-old had a fantastic start to this year. He's sitting pretty at the top of the table. Yes, it's his third season in F2, but you know, he started early. He's still only 22. He's achieved podiums pretty consistently throughout those 3 years as well. He is a very, very talented, young, capable Formula 1 driver. On top of that, he's Brazilian, which I think is a commercial dream. We haven't seen a Brazilian in an F1 seat since Felipe Massa left at the end of 2017. Yes, we had Pietro Fittipaldi, but he was only in for a couple of races. I think a full-time Brazilian race seat would bring a lot of eyeballs in Brazil, and I think that's a fan base and a market. You know, we need in Interlagos a hometown hero, and I think Felipe would be the perfect man to fill that role. And then driver number 3, because typically I leave this spot for kind of the reserve driver as such. But on this occasion, I'm not so sure. So maybe I'll leave it up to you. Let me know in the comments below, out of these 3 drivers, which 2 should take the main full-time seats? Because alongside Jack and Felipe, I'm putting Stoffel Vandoorne's hat into the mix. The man has a good chunk of F1 experience, did 3 seasons at McLaren from 2016 to 18. He's got a point to prove because he did very much get bodied by Fernando Alonso. But let's be honest, most people get bodied by Fernando Alonso. There's nothing to be too ashamed of, really, is it? From 2019 onwards, he's been with Mercedes, be that on their sim or in that Formula E team. So again, he's got a lot of knowledge. You know, he's got more experience than Jack, and he would be able to bring in expertise off track as well as experience on it. I think he'd be motivated for a return, although I would say that I think Stoffel's the driver who would be least prepared to accept just the reserve role. You know what I mean? Like, he's 30 years of age now, so I think it's either all or nothing for him. But yeah, that's my 3 driver roster. Jack Aitken, Felipe Drogovic, Stoffel Vandoorne. Which 2 should get the main seats? Let me know below. Okay, that's all the boring chat done. Now it's time to look at some design stuff. Starting with the driver overalls, the driver suits. How are these lads gonna be dressed up? Because when you look at Hyundai in motorsport, their navy, light blue, orange combination, I think it's a really unique colour combination and it's a really strong one. I absolutely love how these cars look. I think they've got some of the strongest liveries in all of motorsport. So how's that going to reflect on my driver suits? Well, here we go. Navy base. Because it's dark, that gives maximum contrast to the brand sponsor logos that are on the overalls so that they shine as much as they can. Secondary colour is that lovely light blue, which kind of accents, and then you've got the orange, which is kind of the third colour here to really set things off. You can see I've got that hatch design on the neckline, which is something we've seen Hyundai use before, and I will be carrying that onto the car as well. Sponsor wise, so on the left chest you can see under the Hyundai logo you've got the Genesis logo mentioned earlier. They are the premium version of Hyundai, so it makes sense to shout them out. You've also got Mobis. Now Hyundai Mobis is kind of like the parent organization to Hyundai, which doesn't just focus on building cars. It's more to do with the kind of technology that can find its way into cars, but also in other industries. Also on the arms, you can see the H2 logo, which is related to Hyundai's kind of fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell approach. Whether that's got legs in it compared to electric cars, who knows, but Hyundai are putting resource towards that. And I've also chucked LG on there because I didn't know LG is also Korean. But yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with how these have come out actually. When I'm given this colour palette to work with, it's very difficult to get it wrong because it's just so lovely. And last but by no means least, and I'm sure the part you lot have been waiting for, this is what I put at the end obviously, is my livery design. I've got my hands on the brand new Race Sim Studio 2022 car model, link to that down in the description if you want to make your own. All you need is Photoshop and Assetto Corsa, although this isn't a tutorial, so if you want to do your own, work it out yourself, you lazy mugs. So here it is, my rendition of the 2022 Hyundai Formula 1 car. I've got to say, my favourite angle of this is this kind of rear quarter with the Shell logo and the orange hatch. I just think that looks lovely. But yeah, here it is. It's a bit more of a clear view of the sponsors as well. So I guess starting at the side. And actually my approach with this livery, which I think a lot of real livery designers do more so, is that you start with the logos. Make sure, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day, it's a billboard. Start with the logo placement, then build the base template livery around that. So the Hyundai, the Genesis, the N of course, which is their performance line, and the Mobis, they were all kind of the first ones I put down. The balance here of, again, it's bulk navy, then the light blue, then the orange, just like with the overalls as well. And again, I've looked at their other motorsport liveries and tried to not straight up copy, but take inspiration from them, but just add more kind of flowing lines, I suppose, because their rally car livery, for example, is very kind of, you know, straight and blocky, and it works for that shape of car, but I don't think it would work as well for this shape. I think you need longer, more flowing lines for the, you know, big chunky boy that is a Formula 1 car. I built the kind of cross hatching into here on the front, so as we transition from the blue to the orange, which I think works really nicely. Come down to the front. I'm not massively keen, honestly, on what I've done with the nose here. I think that could look a lot nicer. That's the thing, I could spend forever on these liveries, constantly changing things. No, you know what, I am pretty happy with how this looks. I also kind of half cross-hatched the wheel covers, because I've been disappointed generally of how little the teams have really made use of the wheel cover. I mean, I think the Mercedes ones look ugly. Do something nice like the Alfa Romeo's done with them. At least try something, come on. I guess they're all saving on weight, aren't they? But yeah, here it is. Obviously, Korean Airlines has made its way on through the Jack Aitken connection. Ioniq as well is on the car, which is, again, Hyundai's kind of electrification division. They've got quite a lot of sub-brands, Hyundai, which is maybe a bit confusing. You think maybe they could consolidate some of them and not have so many, but whatever. If they've got an F1 car, they're probably going to promote it. Genesis on the side as well, number 13, because why not? And yeah, there she is. Let me know what you think. Rate this livery, I guess, out of 10. What would you have done differently? Or do you just think I'm great and I'm perfect and I've just done a wonderful job? Because, you know, that's allowed as well. Now, that's a wrap. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. You know I really enjoy making these What If Blank Joined F1 videos. It's been a while. Thanks again to Squarespace for the continued support of me and what I do. You literally made it onto the back of my Stag Do t-shirt. Let me know what you think of this offset camera position. I thought I'd give it a try. Now I've got a little bit of a background going on. And now time to edit this video in 40-degree heat because it's absolutely roasting in the UK. But never mind, my name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.